we have the legitimacy to target those civilian targets. And I would advise the Iranian to believe President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, because they have showed in the last month that they are capable of striking any target in Iran.
Well, the man you just heard from, who sounds like he has a hot potato in his mouth as he's speaking, is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. And he was essentially previewing the IDF's new war crime-laden plot to try to attempt to topple the regime in Iran. Now, before you hear more from Danny Danon and the plan itself, Cenk, your 2 cents.
I thought he sounded German. Like, it literally sounded like a German accent to me.
He sounds like a douchebag, that's what he sounds like.
Yeah, so because they're now doing the same things that the Germans did. I mean, it's a horrific irony of how fascism has moved from Germany to Israel, who were the original victims, obviously, of the Germans. Okay, so what you're about to see, guys, is a new piece of propaganda. It's called dual use. That's the phrase that they're using. You remember when Dick Cheney said, "Oh, we're not doing torture, we're doing enhanced interrogations." So now, oh no, we're not hitting civilian targets, we're hitting dual use targets. So Anna, explain to us how Israel, and unfortunately us, we've been dragged into this, are going to do terrorism going forward.
That's exactly right. Now, this was reported by Miriam Adelson's paper in Israel known as Israel Hayom. And they report that on the working assumption that the regime will not accept the American demands and that its overthrow is still out of reach, the direction the US appears to be taking in order to bring about Iran's collapse is the economic one. Fascinating. As part of the escalating attacks, the targets expected to come under fire include additional bridges. We're talking about civilian infrastructure here, folks, and major railway lines, especially those leading to the capital, Tehran. The expanded target bank also includes various sectors of the oil industry, both in extraction and in related products, including petrochemical industries. In fact, wow, would you look at that? The war minister in Israel, Israel Katz, announced today that the IDF targeted a petrochemical facility in Iran, saying that the IDF forcefully struck Iran's largest petrochemical plant. This key facility accounts for about 50% of Iran's petrochemical output. This follows an attack on Iran's second largest facility last week. As a result, both facilities, which together account for 85% of Iran's petrochemical production, are now out of operation. Oh, goody. Now, Israel Hayom also claims, and that leads to the next phase of the economic war, a complete halt to Iran's oil exports, its oxygen pipeline, which has already been hit hard since the start of the war. This economic move, which over the past year has deepened the crisis as sanctions enforcement intensified, is ultimately expected to bring about economic collapse. The whole point is, well, if you succeed in economic collapse in Iran, you're more likely to topple the regime in Iran. That is the plan. So again, I want to be very clear, Israel and the United States have a plot to intentionally target civilian infrastructure, economic infrastructure in Iran in an effort to topple the regime so Israel can expand its borders. In late March, the Iranian Red Crescent Society reported that more than 82,000 civilian structures have been damaged by US-Israeli bombardments, including 62,000 homes, 498 schools, and 281 medical centers, hospitals, and pharmacies. Additionally, 17 Red Crescent bases and 94 ambulances and rescue vehicles have also been damaged. And those are just the numbers from late March. So in the first 6 days of April, as we know, Israel and the United States further targeted Iranian civilian infrastructure.
Yeah, so this is a win-win for Israel. So how so? They have two goals in the war in terms of the Iranian regime. Plan A was regime change, go in, put in Reza Pahlavi. That seems very difficult now, and US has partly rejected Reza Pahlavi as the leader of Iran because he has no support inside the country. The support you see in American media is completely manufactured, 100% propaganda. It doesn't represent any Iranians at all. It's actually the Israelis pretending the Iranians want a dictator who's a puppet to Israel. So now that was their plan A. And the more we dig into the war, the more we destroy their infrastructure, they destroy our infrastructure, the more we have to put in ground troops to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And the more likely you're gonna get regime change. So Israel loves that. But if that fails, they have a plan B. And again, we get this from the Israeli papers. The American press is totally owned by the government of Israel. I don't mean that literally, I mean it as in their actions.
It's owned by Zionists. It's owned by Zionists. They're Americans who care about Israel more. Yeah, I'm accusing them of not dual loyalty, but prioritizing a foreign country over our own. That is what I'm accusing them of.
So the evidence is clear, right? They won't report things even the Israeli press reports.
Yeah.
So plan B now, according to the Israeli press, is chaos. Now, why? Why do they want that? It could lead to civil war. It debilitates the Iranian regime. They have to focus internally. So Israel thinks that means they can't fund proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. They can't be a regional superpower anymore, and that allows Israel to dominate the region. And as Netanyahu recently bragged, and we showed you on video, he says now we could even be a global superpower, okay? So that's the first win for Israel. The second win is we have been telling you guys, and we're about the only ones, Leviathan, but you could look this up. Please look it up for yourselves. Leviathan is a massive gas field in Israel, and they're now bragging that it's going to be the only alternative left after all the energy infrastructure in the Gulf and Iran are destroyed. So that's going to make Israel richer. So they're like, we're getting the sucker Americans and the rest of the world to destroy our enemies and destroy all the energy so that we're even richer and no one can stop us. Now I'm gonna tell you about someone that is a partner of ours that our audience loves. If you know me, I'm always out of time. When I need a fresh meal that's delicious and nutritious, my go-to is Cook Unity. Cook Unity is a chef-crafted meal straight to your door. I recently tried jerk chicken rasta pasta in my last order. Why did I pick that one? Because the name sounded fun. And it turned out it was delicious. That
sounds fun.
So it's high protein, it gave me the energy I needed to finish the day strong, and I like to finish the day strong. These aren't boring, repetitive meals, I've done a lot of them. These are all-star chefs, Food Network alums, and James Beard winners, which I found out is a good thing. Almost like James Beard, no, I'm just kidding. You're handpicking seasonal ingredients and balancing bold flavors with nutrition, which I need. There are over 25 diets and cuisines to choose from to satisfy your cravings and wellness goals. Commitment-free subscription starts as low as $11 a meal. That's like half a sandwich in LA, and you get a delicious award-winning meal. So skip deliveries, pause, or cancel anytime. Taste craftsmanship in every bite from the award-winning chefs behind Cook Unity. Go to cookunity.com/TYT or enter code TYT before checkout to get 50% off your first order. That's 50% off your first order by using code TYT or going to cookunity.com/TYT. Meanwhile, gas prices all across the world are skyrocketing. So the whole world is in great pain, but Israel thinks this is perfect. It's a win-win for us.
So further throwing cold water on the notion that Israel ever cared about the freedom and liberation of the Iranian people, we turn to Israel's former defense minister, Yoav Gallant, who urged President Donald Trump to flatten Iran. Civilian lives be damned, of course. And he said this on Israel's Channel 12, quote, "The United States has the ability to do whatever it wants in Iran, to destroy the heavy industry, hit the oil, hit the bridges, hit the production sites, turn Tehran into a flat place. Everything is doable." Who are the terrorists? Who are the terrorists? You still have a lack of clarity on that? I'll keep going. So Danny Danon, the gentleman we heard from earlier, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, was on Fox News this morning to declare that Israel is justified in targeting civilian infrastructure and lied to make it appear as though Iran is the one targeting Israel's civilian infrastructure first, which is not true. Let's watch what he has to say and then I'll break it down.
The president has been talking about the possibility of going after power plants and bridges in Iran if they don't reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Joel Rayburn is a retired US Army colonel who says strikes on power plants could destabilize this regime. I want to get your thoughts.
We tried from the beginning to focus on military targets, but according to international law, if the other side is attacking civilian targets, you are allowed to retaliate. And we are seeing in the last few days that they continue to target civilian targets in Israel, in the Gulf, airports, hotels. So we have legitimacy to target those civilian targets. And I would advise the Iranian to believe President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, because they have showed in the last month that they are capable of striking any target in Iran.
In reality, Israel and the United States strikes civilian infrastructure in Iran, economic infrastructure in Iran, and Iran responds in kind. And so this lie about how Iran started it is laughable when the United States carried out strikes against Iran to start this war on February 28th.
Yeah. As I hear him speaking, I feel like he's going to finish every sentence with "mach schnell."
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
So, okay, now we started the war. We killed 49 of their top leaders, including the Grand Ayatollah, in the first day of the war. Imagine if Iran had started the war and killed 49 of the top Israeli leaders. Now, do you think that we would call Iran terrorists if they did that? Obviously, right? Everyone would be screaming from the rooftops, "Terrorists!" But when Israel does it, and now they're dragging America into their war crimes, nope, not terrorists. Absurd. So did you hear what he says there? It's an interesting new standard. He says if someone hits civilian infrastructure and civilian targets, you are allowed to retaliate towards civilian targets. So wait a minute, Israel hit Iranian civilian targets. So is Iran allowed to retaliate by hitting Israeli civilian targets? Because it's not my logic. It's the German/Israeli ambassador there. And I'm sorry, Germans, you're good guys now. You don't deserve that.
No, they side way too much with Israel. Can you guys be on the right side once? Just once. Can you be on the right side once?
Yeah, okay, so anyways. So now when Iran hits civilian infrastructure in retaliation, will we say, oh no, that's fair. The Israeli ambassador said that that's a new standard and it's perfectly fine. Or will Jake Tapper scream from the top of his lungs, "Terrorists! Poor Israel! Poor Israel! They're the victims!" Right? Of course they will. Every liar on television will pretend that when Iran does it or any Muslim country does it, it's terrorism. And when Israel does it, oh no, they're allowed to. They're allowed to. Nonsense. Biggest terrorist organization in the world is the idea.
100%. In fact, one other element that I want to share with you all has to do with this fear mongering about Iran's non-existent nuclear weapons. They never built nukes. They didn't have the capacity to use nukes against their enemies. But you want to know who has nukes? Israel. They're not part of the non-proliferation treaty as any other nuclear power is. And they stole our nuclear secrets to start their clandestine nuclear program and still refuse to officially acknowledge that they have a nuclear program. However, the topic of using nukes against Iran tends to come up quite a bit in Israeli media. And I want to give you one example. So just recently on Israel's Channel 14, anchor Shimon Ricklin asked Ben-Gvir, okay, that's Minister Ben-Gvir, why aren't we using what's called a neutron bomb, a type of atomic bomb that doesn't damage buildings? So there was some back and forth. There was some other panelists on the show, but he turns to Ben-Gvir and says, "I recognize your smile, Minister Ben-Gvir." Ben-Gvir then responds with, "My position is well known, and I'll put it in the simplest terms. We need to wipe out the Iranian regime."
When asked about nuking Iran.
Yes.
So guys, there is a giant threat to not just the region, but the entire planet. And it is not Iran, it is Israel. So look, how can you tell who's right and who's wrong? Because there's nonsense propaganda from all sides at all times. So how do you know we're right and they're wrong? Well, you can see the facts for yourself. The trick that the other side uses, which is almost all of American mainstream media, is framing, right? But there are core facts that you cannot argue with. Iran never had nukes. Israel does have nukes. Iran put out a fatwa, and if you think that's no big deal, you're totally wrong. A fatwa is the most important religious edict you could possibly have, saying that they would never build nukes, let alone use them. The Grand Ayatollah who we murdered put out that fatwa. And also think about this, if Iran ever built a nuke, which they never had, and use it against Israel, what do you think would happen? All of Iran would be nuked.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so do you think that they're going to countenance having their entire population wiped off the map? And all of American media says it like as if they're such animals and savages that if they ever had a nuke, they would immediately launch it because they're so filled with hate against Jews. And they would want, even though they know that it would kill like 70, 80 million Iranians in the response, that they would do it instantly. Think about how racist that assumption is in the first place. And almost everyone in American media says that. And remember, Iran never had a nuke. Okay, but Israel not only has nukes, now they're on television. Ben-Gvir is among the top 3 most important government officials in Israel. He is driving the agenda. Everything he has said, Israel has eventually done.
Yeah.
So he is now saying not only do we have nukes, but we're willing to use them.
Yeah.
They're a super dangerous terrorist state with nuclear weapons.
That's true. Now, the only I guess the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope that Israel is getting checked on their nuclear weapons, because you know the West ain't gonna do it. China came out and said to Israel, if you nuke Iran, we're gonna nuke you.
Oh my God, I hadn't heard that. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, okay. So, hey, and if you're one of these Israeli ass kissers who are like, how dare they?
No.
No. You don't get to murder 70, 80 million people, pretend it's self-defense, and then complain when it happens to you, okay? So here's a great way to avoid that. Do not ever think about using your goddamn nukes, which by the way, you stole from us. Iran didn't steal the nuclear technology from us. Israel, the betrayers, stole it from us. The betrayers also sent Jonathan Pollard to steal all of our other top secret information. They are not remotely an ally. A terrorist state has captured our government through bribery, through billions of dollars in bribes. They've completely captured our government. Now they're threatening to use those nukes. So sorry, I'm not gonna shed a tear. If they murder 80 million people, what happens to goddamn Israel afterwards?
Right.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.